the German Pugwash group. I'm also a physicist, and I have the privilege and of course honor to introduce Tatsujiro Suzuki. Let me first emphasize that this meeting, I think, deals with an important topic, Fukushima and the debate of Japan's nuclear future. And Tatsu is here on the invitation of the German Physical Society. I'm the chair of the working group on physics and disarmament, and he gave already a talk in the afternoon, and he will repeat that public talk here with this very small audience. You will have, I think, a lot of room and time to raise questions and to discuss all these issues in detail. Some sentences to Pugwash. Pugwash was founded in 1957 and is very much dedicated to nuclear disarmament. And as we know, there are strong links between nuclear disarmament and nuclear energy, which is very often forgotten. But we know as from Pugwash, Tatsu is actually the chairman of the Japanese Pugwash group, and this is especially a special honor that to have you here. We had in 2005 the annual meeting in Hiroshima, and we hope that one of the next meetings might be also in Japan, in Nagasaki. Let's see whether that works. We know us from many debates and also from the Pugwash Council, and I know that Tatsu is very much dedicated also to nuclear disarmament, and it was for us a good opportunity to learn that he became vice chairman of the Japanese Atomic Energy Commission, which is always good to have very knowledgeable people in the government, which is also sometimes not easy for the government and also for you. Tatsu holds a degree in nuclear energy and technology and policy and a doctorate in engineering. And prior to his position at GAEC, which is the Japanese Atomic Energy Commission, he worked as a senior researcher at the Research Institute for Electric Power Industry. He was also a fellow at the Belfer Center of the Harvard School. We know us from that time, and he's a visiting professor at the University of Tokyo. So he's a lot of experiences in that field, and I think for me and for all of us, he played an important role during the Fukushima incident, because he was twittering very good and concrete and reliable information. Very often governments in these situations are not doing it. And he, as the vice chairman, helped a lot of scientists and engineers all over the world to understand what's going on there. And subsequently, he certainly also is dealing and was dealing with that very tragical incident, which was also, we should not forget that, a reaction of the big tsunami. Many people died in this tsunami, and the parts of the debate are concentrating on nuclear energy. And we, as Germans, and thanks to Chancellor Merkel, get rid of nuclear energy. At least she stated that, and we hope that stays for a long time. But I think it's very important to learn what the debate on nuclear energy in Japan is all about, and we certainly, and you also will provide information to Tatsu what the Germans think about nuclear energy. So I'm sure that this will be a very exciting evening for you. Unfortunately, not for me. The reason is that normally Ulrike Wunderle, she is now the executive director of the VDW since several days, intended to introduce you. She was very well prepared. I know that because we were talking about that. And unfortunately, she has fever and is in bed. So I jumped in. And unfortunately, I have to go now to my members' assembly, which is taking part starting at 7 o'clock. So I'm already 10 minutes late, and I'm the chair of that group. So you can imagine that for me, this was a very stressful thing. But again, it's a pleasure to have Tatsu here, and I'm sure you will enjoy that. And it's totally impolite, especially in Japanese standards, to make an introduction and to go away. But I know that Tatsu is in good hands here. Julia Pippig is here from the VDW, and we are of course thankful to the VDW they provided all these vicinities and these location here, and I'm sure that also Ulrike is very sad that she couldn't be here. At the end, let me introduce Christoph Pistner. This event is also organized together with the Forschungsverbund Naturwissenschaft, Abrüstung, Internationale Sicherheit. I will not translate that to English because we would even...
He just did that.
Yes, okay. So, but he will take care of the discussion, and FONAS is also one of the co-sponsors and co-organizers, and I'm sure, because I know the talk already, that you will enjoy Tatsu. So
thank you very much.
If I can say that with that subject, have some kind of fun with that subject, which is indeed a very serious subject. So Tatsu, please.
Thank you very much for a kind introduction. Good evening. My name is Tatsujiro Suzuki. It's my honor and also pleasure to be here tonight with such a distinguished experts. And sometimes it's very good to have a small group of experts to have a very deep discussion. I'm looking forward to the discussion. So I will speak roughly 15 minutes, less than 15 minutes probably, and then we can have a more in-depth discussion afterwards. And although I'm still a government official, today's my talk is my personal view. So don't think that I'm talking is the all government views. I'm trying to be frank as possible. Okay, and let me start with the summary. Those are the 4 points I'd like to convey you to this evening. The first point is that the March 11 Fukushima nuclear accident had a huge impact on Japan's nuclear energy policy, and the priority of the nuclear energy policy has changed completely. Atomic Energy Commission issued a statement about 1 month after the accident that we have to consider the fundamental change in nuclear energy policy, and the first priority is of course to manage the crisis and then decommissioning of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plants, and also to take care of the people who were forced to evacuate from the Fukushima area. As of today, still 140,000 people are away from home, and they are wondering when they can come back home. And also they are concerned about the health impact of radiation. And I have personal experience in talking to some of the people in the last 2 or 3 years. It is very, very heartbreaking to talk to those people. It's just not simply just a simple risk analysis or technical discussion. You have to go beyond the technical discussion to talk with those people. And so the first priority to take care of the Fukushima accident is the first priority. The second issue is, let's say for the nuclear energy policy in Japan, we still have a debate among the experts, among the public, and we don't know where we'll go. So Atomic Energy Commission decided that we should focus on issues regardless of the future direction of nuclear energy. For example, nuclear waste, nuclear safety, public confidence, and particularly talking about the later spent fuel management and plutonium issues. So those are the issues that we are focusing on right now, regardless of the future of nuclear energy. That's the second point I'd like to make. Third one is that the Atomic Energy Commission was asked to assess the different fuel cycle options given this nuclear accident. And in Japan, as you know, has been committed to close the fuel cycle and breeder reactor eventually. That was the mainstream of a policy since 1957. So 50 years or so, we have been committed to close fuel cycle. But given this accident, we open up the more fuel cycle options, and the main conclusion is that because the future is uncertain, we should have been more flexible, which I will talk about later in detail what it means. And eventually, in order to be more flexible, those are the things that we think is very important. Spent fuel management, particularly how to have a secure storage of spent fuel, and also making a direct disposal of spent fuel. In Japan, still direct disposal of spent fuel is illegal. We cannot dispose of spent fuel legally. And third, most important thing for non-proliferation standpoint is the plutonium stockpile management. So those are the things I'd like to talk about today. Okay, let's talk about Fukushima Daiichi issue right now. The left picture is taken on September 15 when a huge big typhoon attacked in the eastern part of Japan, and the water is struggling with this contaminated water. This is the tank storing the contaminated water. It's overflowing from the tank, and they have to stop this rainwater to overflow from the dike. Now they are building more higher wall. This tank is around here. It's as of today, I think more than 400,000 tons of contaminated water is stored here. And every 10 days or so, it has to increase more. Another this huge tank contains roughly 100 tons of water, something like that. Anyway, so this is a storage tank, and you see this high level of radiation means some of the water is leaking. That's the problem. And from this side is the mountain side, and this is the seaside, so it is a slope. Underground water is flowing from this mountain side to the seaside. Every day, this is estimated, roughly 800 tons of water, underground water is flowing this way. So we have to stop flowing the underground water from mountainside to go into this area. If you go into this area, it's contaminated. And the estimate is about 400 tons of water is flowing into this area. So every day we have to take up this contaminated water and then store. And now there is a plant to remove most of the radioactive nuclides from this contaminated water. But that plant is not operating at full capacity. Actually, I saw the news yesterday. The plant has been stopped again, the malfunction. They are going to build another one, but they cannot eliminate tritium, unfortunately. So tritium is concentrated in this hot water. And then these dots are the wells that TEPCO made to pump up the water, underground water, before it gets into the building. So it's supposed to be clean. And those water can be, how do you call, just throw into the open sea because it is clean. But local community opposed, even for non-contaminated water, because during the accident, the contaminated water was leaked to the sea, and there was announcement was late, so there was a huge mistrust between the local community and TEPCO. So even if it's clean, you never know. That's what the local community people say. So we have to store these non-contaminated water too. So this is a heavy, serious issue, and there's still also, because if this water is contaminated water is leaking from this dike, then it's going to the open sea. Here we have a fence now, so they have a monitoring stations, and seems like the contaminated water is not leaking to the open sea. But here it could be a problem. There's no fence, so they have been monitoring also. So no significant increase in the radioactivity in the area, and they are going to build another fence here too. But so this is a serious management issue of the water, and this blue wall is the so-called permanent solution to isolate the plant area by building about 30 meters deep, so-called frozen soil method wall to isolate this area, not stopping the water coming into this area and also preventing the water from this place to the seawater. So this is going to be a huge task for next 1 or 2 years, but that's only a part of the problem, of course. This picture shows how to, now it's underway, removing the spent fuel from the pool of Unit 4, which was run up without any serious accident. There was no core fuel in the reactor at that time. But this was heavily damaged, so they first installed reinforced the building so that the earthquake resistance can be maintained. And then now removing about 1,500 spent fuel assemblies now every day. They're removing from last November. Now it's about 1/3 of the fuel has been removed as of just 3 days ago. And you can visit this website, and they are updating every day. So it will take another 6 months, 7 months or so to finish this spent fuel removal for the Unit 4. We have to do the same thing for other 3 units, and it will take another maybe 1 or 2 years. And then eventually try to move the melted core to remove the debris from the reactors, which is we hope this will remain in the bottom of the containment vessel, but we still don't know where it is and what kind of shape it is. And water is leaking from the containment vessel, so we have to find out where the leak comes from. They finally, the Unit 2, they sent a robot moving around, and they found there's a hole in the suppression chamber. So hopefully this remote control robot will find out where the damage is, where the fuel is located, and then eventually we will fill up the water and then remove this melted core from the reactor itself. That will take probably another at least 10 years, because 10 years is the year that the 3-mile island will remove the core debris. So this will probably be more complicated, so maybe more than 10 years. But eventually, then we have to decommission the whole plant. So we estimated roughly 40 years or so to finish this whole process. This is going to be a biggest challenge of the Japanese nuclear history, and it requires lots of help from the international world. I really appreciate you can give us knowledge and wisdom to solve this whole problem. So this is the main task, the first priority of the Japanese nuclear energy policy. Okay, the evacuation area. This is the last. This is 1 year after the accident. Has been shrinking because of the decontamination and the natural decay. This gray area was the so-called no entry zone, but it's now getting better. No entry zone is gone now by last summer, but this red area is still higher than the 50 millisieverts per year. This is the year, and so you are not allowed to get in unless you have permission. And this yellow area is roughly 20 to 50 millisieverts per year. You can go in to visit your house, but you cannot stay. This green area now is less than 20 millisieverts, so we are expecting within a few years we can come back. And government just announced, Nuclear Regulatory Authority just announced that there's a guideline for returning from the evacuated area to the village. This 20 millisieverts per year has not been changed for the guidelines, but if you decide to come back, all citizens have to carry film badge to measure your own radiation exposure. Otherwise, this number is only average number. So assuming this is estimated number also, assuming 8 hours of living outside of your house. So depending on your behavior, your exposure could be higher or could be lower. So that's a safety procedure. But also politically, a socially difficult thing is even in the same town, like this village, this is the whole village, Idade village, and Namiya town also, you see that the mix of colors means some areas you can come back, but some areas you cannot come back. And so the mayors have a very difficult decision when they can announce that these people can come back. Also, older generation tend to want to go back. Those people are less concerned about the radiation risk. But for the younger generation, with the small kids particularly, they don't want to go back, and regardless of the level of radiation. So the family is divided. There are many divorces reported, unfortunately. And so there's a family fight, whether they will go back or not. And so village is divided. So it's becoming a more social, political issue. It's a very difficult situation that the government has to deal with. Primarily, the decision is up to the local community. But the government, central government, has been promising that we should decontaminate the area eventually less than 1 millisieverts per year. But that will take a long, long time. So this picture was taken 2 years ago. The springtime, there's a huge, beautiful cherry blossom in town called Tomioka town, which is right here. It's about 10 kilometers south of Fukushima power plant. And the mayor decided to decontaminate this street so that people can come back and enjoy the cherry blossoms. But I was there last year. It was very beautiful. It was very low level of radiation, but you have to still wear protective clothes. But after about 10-20 kilometers from here, we still have a higher radiation because they did not decontaminate. Because these are mountains and forests. It's very difficult to decontaminate mountains and forests. So, and also you can't see very well, but there's a barrier in this street. So this house, for instance, you cannot come back. So it's a very difficult situation in those areas. But so my point is, this returning to the village, it's getting more realistic, but its decision is very difficult, very social and political issue. If the overall impact of the accident, compared with Chernobyl, the estimated quantity of radioactivity is roughly 1/10, and also the area contaminated is also roughly 1/10, less than 1/10. So hopefully the health impacts will also be much smaller than the Chernobyl accident. This is the measurement made by different areas. So this is near the Fukushima city, the capital of Fukushima prefecture, which is roughly 30 kilometers west. No, more than 30 kilometers. This is 30 kilometers. So Fukushima city, and right after the accident, it was very high, 2.6, close to 3 microsievert, but now it's less than 0.5 microsievert. It's going down. And this is also cumulative exposure in 4 months. It's almost less than 1 millisievert per for 4 months. So it's getting radiation exposure. It's getting less for the general public. But the point is it's still going down quite rapidly. But from here, it will not go down much. So that's the problem. This is an internal exposure measurement by whole body counter. They did it after June, so it was maybe a little bit too late, but we didn't have enough whole body counters, so we did it. But fortunately, the measurements suggest that most of the people already received less than 1 millisievert internal exposure. But unfortunately, this was a little bit too late, but we have to continue to measure whole body counters eventually. And so this is the result. So that's the general situation of the Fukushima situation. So let me talk about the impact on global nuclear energy development. This is the historical trend, and you can see currently roughly 438 reactors are operating, and 71 units are under construction, and most of it actually in the Far East, particularly China and South Korea, and then some Middle East, and this South Asia is India, the biggest, highest growth in the nuclear power construction. And this one shows the historical trend of when nuclear construction started. You see the peak is 1970s. After 3 Mile Island and after Chernobyl accident, new construction stopped. But they can maintain, you see, they maintain the nuclear power capacity in 1980s because it was relatively new. All the nuclear power plants in OECD countries are relatively new, so they can maintain the level of nuclear power even if there's no new construction. But Fukushima accident happened when 40-year lifetime reactor is coming soon. So if there is no new nuclear power plant project, many reactors, roughly half of the 400 reactors, you probably have to be replaced in the next 10 years. So the impact of Fukushima accident could be more serious than the impact of TMI or Chernobyl accident because it's just about the timing of most of the OECD countries' reactors are getting older in the next 10 years. So this shows that the share of nuclear power plant out of the total electricity generation in the world has been declining from peak of 17% to only 10% now. And so this is a not good sign for the climate change. This is IAEA estimate in the future, still significant growth estimated by IAEA, but compared with the 2011, that growth rate has been declining. And even for the highest growth, like 100 gigawatts in 2050, the share of nuclear power is going to decline. That's the problem. If you want to catch up with a fast, rapidly growing electricity demand, you have to build more. If the share is to be reduced, we have to find an alternative to nuclear power for non-carbon sources. Otherwise, the carbon emission reduction target will not be met. So this is going to be a serious issue for climate change. Okay, let's talk about Japanese situation. The biggest issue in Japan, this is before the March 11th. This is before the 2011. This is energy policy in 2010. You cannot see it here, but the share of nuclear power was 25% in 2007. The plan was to increase the share to nuclear power to close to 50%, and other non-carbon sources to 20%. So 70% of the electricity come from non-carbon sources. That was the plan. And in order to increase the nuclear share to 50%, the government said that we have to build 40 more nuclear reactors by 2030. That was the plan before the accident. Now it is gone. See, the public opinion poll, this was taken last year. This is a kind of typical response. Roughly 80 to 85% of the public say phase out nuclear power eventually. And but the shocking number here is that the person who is in favor of immediate shutdown, don't start up, has been increasing to 30% to 31%. The reason behind this is probably two reasons. One is the deep mistrust with the government and industry. Every day we have a news report from the TEPCO Fukushima site that the contaminated water is leaking, some mismanagement. So still public doesn't trust the utility industry and the government also. So even after the new regulatory standards are set up, I hoped that the public sentiment is getting better, but that's not the case. And but the total 80% of the people who want to phase out nuclear power has remained same, and status quo has been decreasing. And but some gradual increase is increasing a little bit. But the point is that still the great majority of the Japanese public wants to phase out nuclear power eventually. But short-term impact of shutting down nuclear power plants is significant. You can see by shutting down all 48 reactors, naturally increased consumption of fossil fuel. Roughly 90% of the power comes from fossil fuel in Japan now. And because of this fossil fuel purchase, utilities expense on the fuel price, fuel expenses have increased. Roughly 3 trillion yen, $30 billion last year. This will increase the electricity rate roughly 10% last year, and then probably another 10% this year. But you see, one important thing is that price increase also contributed, and also energy conservation was quite significant. Roughly 20% electricity consumption was reduced in the last 2 years. Actually, that's very significant. So we have to look at the positive side of this energy impact on energy conservation. The CO2 emission increase, and total increase was roughly same as emission increase in entire Middle East and India. So this is natural because we are increasing the fossil fuel consumption. So this is a short-term problem. So we have to think about how to reduce CO2 emission. If we want to phase out nuclear power, how we're going to do it is a major task also for the government. Okay. The economic impact, the power generation cost, we were asked to estimate the new nuclear power generation cost given the nuclear accident. This was old estimate, 5.9 yen per kilowatt hour, but updated number has been increased slightly. And then we included government subsidies, like compensation for the local community and also for R&D. Government R&D expenses are now included. This is significant also. But the most difficult part of this estimate was how to incorporate the cost associated with the Fukushima accident. It was difficult, but we made a calculation based on the current estimate, well, not current, at that time, based on the estimate of total cost is 6 trillion yen, which is $60 billion for accident cost. It's roughly 0.5 yen per kilowatt hour. But this 6 trillion yen is a minimum level. It's increasing right now. As of today, the best estimate is roughly 10 trillion yen, it's $100 billion. Then you have to increase 0.4 yen per kilowatt hour. So already the current estimate is not 8.9 yen, it's already 9.3 yen. And it's going to increase further. So if you compare with this other power sources, it's roughly comparable to fossil fuel. And renewable energy, some of them are quite competitive. Like some of the wind, 8 to 9 yen, and this is offshore, still relatively expensive. But geothermal is very competitive, and some of the also cogeneration and energy efficiency improvement is also very competitive. The point here is nuclear power could be competitive, but future we still don't know how much it's going to cost depending on the cost of the nuclear Fukushima accident. So the uncertainty could be very large, and compensation scheme may have to be revised also. So particularly under the liberalized market, which government is now pushing very hard for full liberalization of the electricity market, maybe it's very difficult for economic reasons to invest in new nuclear power plants in Japan. The new energy basic plan, which was supposed to be coming soon, draft was published last month, but has not been adopted by the government yet, and there was a big still debate going on. But it says that first, we reduce dependence on nuclear power as much as possible. This is reflected in public opinion. At the same time, this government said we continue to use nuclear energy as an important baseload generation, and also keep some necessary level, maintain some level. If you want to maintain some level of nuclear power, we have to replace with existing nuclear power plants, because otherwise we continue to decline. The previous government said we phase out nuclear power by the end of 2030. So this is a quite different approach. But previous government also set lifetime of nuclear power plants, 40 years. That remains as it is. Our current government also, because that's become a law, it's a regulation, 40-year lifetime. So that will remain. So if you don't build new nuclear power plants, and a 40-year reactor lifetime, and if you don't build the nuclear plants, it will eventually phase out. But it says maintain the necessary level means that they may want to build new nuclear power plants. This one doesn't say, so that's a debate going on. All right, so let's talk about nuclear fuel cycle options, which may be an important issue for non-proliferation standpoint. This is a complicated figure, but this is the light water reactor cycle, and they eventually move into a MOX fuel cycle, going to the breeder fuel cycle. This is the Japanese traditional mainstream vision of the Japan closed nuclear fuel cycle. But given the Fukushima accident, Atomic Energy Commission, when we assessed the fuel cycle option, we added two new options. One is so-called limited recycle, which means when you recycle plutonium in light water reactors, you cannot recycle too many times, maybe only once or twice. Then you have to dispose MOX fuel into disposal. Also, of course, so-called one-through fuel cycle, direct disposal option was also included as an option. And we emphasize sphere storage and high-level gas disposal as the key policy factor for the future of the nuclear fuel cycle, regardless of the future of nuclear option. Those two things are necessary anyway, so we push very hard to move forward of this high-level waste disposal and sphere storage. Of course, reprocessing and enrichment are the sensitive facilities for the proliferation standpoint. Anyway, so this is the decision basically made by our subcommittee after the assessment. Basically, we said breeder reactor is not going to be commercialized in the next 30 years, of course. So we only compare the MOX recycling and one-through fuel cycle. And we said basically one-through is more desirable from economic and proliferation standpoints. But the MOX recycling could be more desirable if you consider fuel efficiency is the key part of the energy policy. But if you compare the safety and also waste management, not that different. So if you define the criteria, you can choose which one is better. This is the cost estimate. It's clear that the reprocessing option is more expensive than direct disposal, roughly 2.0 yen to 1.0 yen. So it's roughly twice as much expensive for reprocessing option. But this is the so-called current model, which means right now roughly 50% of the fuel is reprocessed. The rest is long-term storage and eventually reprocessed in the future. So because of the discount rate, this is cheaper. This is current option is cheaper than the old reprocessing option, but still more expensive than the direct disposal option. So basically, reprocessing is more expensive than direct disposal. We calculate total cost depending on also the future share of nuclear power. And this is the total amount of expenses given the current fuel cycle facilities. Basically, compared with the direct disposal, total reprocessing option is more expensive, roughly 4 trillion yen more expensive until 2030. So economics is clear. One through fuel cycle is more desirable. For safety, this is not done by us, this is done by OECD. But one through fuel cycle is more high exposure, particularly for the workers on the uranium mine. If you recycle uranium, we can save uranium mine. So this portion will be reduced, but reprocessing will have a more higher exposure risk. So in total, for the public, recycling is more higher, but for workers, almost same. So I will say this is still, given the numbers of uncertainty, in terms of the public exposure, exposure to the workers and public, not much different. So we decided, we published the decision, we published options for the government that if the Japan wants to continue to expand nuclear power, maybe all reprocessing option could be more desirable. But if you phase out nuclear power, it should be shifted to the ordinary disposal. If you don't know what's going to happen, we should choose the second, middle one, the so-called coexisting. You can reprocess some portion, but you can dispose of that spent fuel direct disposal. So eventually we think that this coexisting option will be the most desirable because the future of nuclear energy is still very uncertain. So after that, Atomic Energy Commission's main keyword is keep your flexibility. So that's what we said. This is the basic policy for budget, next year budget. One of the tasks of the Atomic Energy Commission is every July we publish basic policy for the budget allocation. And so we said that we should focus on the measures that are necessary for regardless of future of nuclear energy policy. The key thing is that flexibility is the key word. In order to increase the flexibility, we have to expand the storage capacity of spent fuel and make it direct disposal as a possible option. As I said, still in Japan, direct disposal is not legally allowed. And the problem is that if you reprocess, because reprocessing is a main policy, spent fuel is considered as an asset rather than waste. So the utility companies put it on the asset account. So if you change the policy to direct disposal, the spent fuel eventually suddenly becomes a liability. So that's why utility companies don't want to change the policy. And same thing for community, local community, and they have tax revenue from the spent fuel. Since this is an asset, but if spent fuel becomes a liability, then you cannot charge the tax on the spent fuel. So there's an institutional momentum to keep the current existing reprocessing policy. So we basically said no, that was before March 11th. Now we have to think about new policy to allow the more flexibility in the fuel cycle. Plutonium management is a key. I will talk about later, but this is the most important part of the Atomic Energy Commission's task. In the energy policy basic plan published in the draft, they talk about two major policies in fuel cycle policy. One is focus on spent nuclear fuel. This is very good. This is what we would propose. We should put the highest priority in what to do with the spent nuclear fuel. And second one is nuclear fuel cycle should be flexible. and also plutonium management is very important. So I hope I'm partly happy this may have reflected our proposal. Let's talk about the spent fuel storage status in Japan right now. Most of the spent fuel is stored in existing nuclear power plants in pool, like the picture. But right now, it's already 70% of the capacity is already full. So some of the reactors in the next 4 or 5 years, if you start operating, some of the reactors will be filled up their pools. So we have to remove the spent fuel from the pool. For where they promised to send spent fuel to reprocessing plant. The low-pressure reprocessing plant is almost complete. Actually, it was supposed to be complete by 2005, but it's been delayed and have not operated yet. They have tested operation. About 400 tons of spent fuel have been reprocessed already, but they have never started the commercial operation yet. Currently, they are under safety examination. So they are building up the storage also. Their pool is only 3,000 tons. It's almost full. And so another option is to go to the Mutsu interior storage site. This is also in Aomori Prefecture. They are also being delayed because of the accident. So the problem is, if we change the policy of reprocessing policy to including a direct disposal, Aomori Prefecture said, please bring back all the spent fuel to the original power plant site. So this is going to be a pretty complicated issue for the utility companies. So all these things, basically, momentum continue to reprocess. And so that's the problem. So we said, no, spent fuel storage is the most important thing right now. And this picture shows the dry gas storage at the Fukushima site. You see the building has been damaged by tsunami. I actually went there after the accident, and it didn't show here, but the car was washed away from by tsunami and get into this building. But the spent fuel cask is very safe, and this, of course, dry gas storage air cooled. You don't need any power, so even if there's no power at all, no problem. So this dry gas storage is probably the safest way to store spent fuel. Okay, for plutonium, if you continue to reprocess, the problem is plutonium is piling up. And actually, that was not a good way to manage the plutonium. So Atomic Energy Commission published the policy, so-called no plutonium surplus policy in 1991. It's a long time ago. And basically it defines that in Japan, no plutonium, Japan doesn't have any plutonium without any specific purpose to use. So the utility has to specify where this plutonium will go. And then also, in order to improve the transparency of the program, Japan has been publishing every year that the plutonium stockpile numbers since 1994. But before Rokkasho reprocessing plant started operating, Japan's Atomic Energy Commission published the new guidelines, more strict guidelines, that the utility have to publish every year, so-called plutonium use plan, before they separate plutonium. And so the idea is that it should be supply and demand should balance by publishing those plans. Unfortunately, now we have 44 tons of plutonium, 35 tons in Europe, 9 tons in Japan. So plutonium stockpile should be reduced regardless of fuel cycle options in the future. This is a statement made by our subcommittee when we assess the fuel cycle options. So how are we going to do this? This is a very difficult task. This is the global plutonium stockpile comparison. You see the France, Japan, Russia, UK, the 4 largest stockpiles from the civilian purposes. All these 4 countries, common thing is that they have a commercial reprocessing plant. If you have a reprocessing plant and then even you have a recycling program like France and Japan, you continue to build up. Because it naturally, supply comes first and you reprocess, and then you continue to use it, but the usage has been delayed, or supply has higher pace than the consumption pace. So this is the figures we publish every year. We have actually much more detailed numbers in this website. You see by kilogram order we publish every year for the transparency purposes. This is the total figure. You see this is the increase in European plutonium. Plutonium Europe, because of the European reprocessing program continues in 1990s and built up in Europe. And slight decline in 2009 is because Japan just finally started the MOX recycling program. Now it's uncertain. That program is uncertain. This is the typical plutonium use plan published by the utility. This is actually the last one published before the nuclear accident. You see this, each utility company has to report what is the current stockpile, how much you recover next year, and then how much plutonium stock at the end of the year, and then which reactor will use how much every year. So this is the way to balance the plutonium supply and demand. And that power plant is now under safety license. So if those 4 or 5 plants are coming back online, you can consume roughly 2.3 or 2.4 plutonium fissile kilograms. But originally was supposed to consume roughly 6 tons of fissile plutonium. This is equal to the supply of Rokkasho reprocessing plant every year. But those programs now is very uncertain. And Rokkasho reprocessing plant is now under safety licensing process. And official plans is to start operation October 2014. And according to their plan, they're going to reprocess 880 tons in the next 3 years, which will produce roughly 8 tons of plutonium. And so, but we don't know when we will start. Probably it may take 1 or 2 years. Monju is supposed to be the main also user of plutonium, has not been operating, and now is under new regulatory standards. And again, now they are shifting from their emphasis from breeder to management, waste management, transmutation R&D. And current status of regular reactors, now no nuclear power plant is operating in Japan, but now 17 reactors are licensed application, and probably PWRs will get the better license probably first. And for plutonium use, as I said, 7 units are for the plutonium recycling, which is total roughly 2.3 tons fissile. And if OMA, which is a full MOX core or reactor, if comes in online, may increase 1.1 tons more, but still not enough to consume Rokkasho's output. And still we have 44 tons of plutonium, so 3 or 4 tons of plutonium per year will take more than 10 years to consume all of the plutonium. So the bilateral commission between US and Japan, this was established after the Fukushima accident. And the last meeting in November, in a public statement, they said for nuclear security reasons, Japan and the United States agreed to reduce the quantities and attractiveness of weapons usable nuclear material, which is HEU, highly enriched uranium, and plutonium. And both countries do have plutonium stockpile. The United States has 34 tons of plutonium. Japan has 44 tons. So we have to work together to reduce those quantities. How are you going to do it? It's very difficult. One of the recent news was that Japan agreed to return weapons-grade plutonium from so-called fast critical assembly. R&D facility has been used for since 1960s. They are going to return this plutonium to the United States. And this is a part of the cooperation under the Global Reduction Initiative. And Japan has been also converting HEU to LEU fuel for research reactors. So these other things have to be accelerated or have to be done very quickly, particularly for plutonium. This is my final slide. This is my personal proposal as a commissioner. I spoke at the public meeting and also wrote an essay at Mail magazine for Atomic Energy Commission. In order to reduce the plutonium stockpile, we need three new things. One is we have to make sure before you reprocess, the demand is there. In the past, we reprocess first and then think about where to burn it. That's a reverse. We have to reverse that order. And second is we have to make a clear target of reducing the plutonium stockpile, which wasn't the case before. And finally, current plan, plutonium use plan is 16 to 18 diameter reactors to use plutonium. It's no longer certain, so we have to think about alternatives, particularly, for instance, that the UK government is proposing that they may be willing to take the ownership title of the plutonium stored in the UK, that kind of thing. So maybe a new disposition or plutonium disposition of the waste, or those kind of other options should be considered. But that has not been decided by the Atomic Energy Commission at this moment. I do my best, hopefully can do by the end of my tenure, by the end of this month, or then we can transfer this policy to the new commissioners so that they can take the final decision soon. Okay, that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
So thank you again quite a lot.
Yes.
Let me please introduce me once again. My name is Christoph Pistner. Apart from being a member of the board of FONAS, I'm also deputy head of the Nuclear Facility and Plant Safety branch of the Öko-Institute in Darmstadt. And I was asked to now moderate a little bit the discussions on here. I think we have something like 20 minutes or even a little bit more for the discussion here, and afterwards there's some wine and drinks outside so that you also have a chance for a little more in-depth discussion later on. I would like to ask you for questions, but I would suggest that perhaps if there are questions, we would start first with the situation on the Fukushima plant itself.